Hello, people, and welcome to another knife review on A Dose of Drew, an episode of Friday Night Knives. And tonight, I am going to be reviewing the Chris Reeve Sebenza 31 Small. This is an inlaid version. You can get them in plain titanium. You can get them with the inlays. This is the second gen with the different clips. For those who don't know, this is one of the classics, and there's good reason for it. If you have not seen this shape, this knife shape, the large version at least, has been in movies. If you have seen the movie Collateral, Tom Cruise's character actually carries a Sebenza in that movie. So that being said, if you look, it is also a classic lines. It is sort of this wasted shape with the drop point. The drop point has the look of a curve. If you look really closely, there's other ways we'll show it here in a moment, but it is actually two different straight angles, essentially. All right, so you got one straight one there. So it's like a drop that's got two angles. The drop does not go below the center line, and it doesn't have a curve. I consider that a drop, not a clip. Your mileage may vary. All right, that being said, this is a knife that often is a grail. It is one of mine that I wanted. I love the lines of this knife. Okay, the swoop, the sweep, the classic lines. There's all sorts of things. There's lots of little tricks that go into it that make these lines, if you look at them, some of the curves make you wonder. I'll go over that in a little bit. And spoiler alert, the level of attention to detail on this is ridiculous. It is an absolute fantastic bit. But first things first, overall dimensions, approximately 7 inches of knife. It is slightly more, and of course everyone gets a little lanyard with these. That is, if you choke back, you'll get to see why. There's a nice little lob there for you to grab a hold of if you choke back on your Sebenza. If you choke up, it's great. It's really good on the pinch. It's great outside of it. For the small, this might come in more handy if you ever want to choke back. That gives you some bit. Blade is slightly less than 3 inches right on the nose. It is relatively slim. If you want to look at, we'll go without the inlays. Without the inlays, it is less than a ½ inch. With the inlays, it is pretty much right on there. It's about 12 millimeters. Very, very, very slim and nice in the hand. Single-sided reversible thumb stud, though I bet you would have trouble getting that off. All sorts of fantastic goodness. Man, this is just a classic, right? So there you go. 7 3/4 inch handle. We'll get into the rest. With those dimensions, those are approximating many small knives. So we'll do a quick large knife comparison here for those who are used to seeing these. Here we go. Rat 1 in D2, and of course my own Rat 2 in D2 here. For size, the dimensions put it right there at the Rat 2, right? So that, get ready for a lot of, hey, look, that looks like it's about the size of the small ones. Because that's pretty much what it is. It is, real quick here, we'll go to the full-size feldspar with its drop point. As you can see, much smaller. And of course, the small feldspar, which is right on the size plane of the wonderful Chris Reeve Sebenza. Again, yeah, it's a bit of a grail knife for some people, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't know if I'd call it a grail knife, but it was a knife that I knew at some point I was going to end up putting in my collection. It's just one of those ones that if I was ever going to spend the money, this was the design I wanted to at least try and experience. And it's not going anywhere, and we'll get to that in a minute. Next up, the Kershaw Blur, much closer in size, but as you can still see, as you can see, it still dwarfs that. And of course, not just any leak, but a random leak. 3-inch blade, 7-inch overall, 4-inch handle, much closer to the leak in size. As you can see, they are nearly nearly identical when it comes to the size, not dimensions and all that stuff, but we will get, depending upon what you get, we will get back to that in a minute. And one more doubled up bit here, the Para 2, or Paramilitary 2, dwarfing this. And the Para 3, this one the lightweight, with a blade swap. As you can see, length, their overall thickness, not really a lot. So definitely much more in the smaller side. And for a couple of little randoms, much like the in place of the Griptilian, have the mini Ritter Hogue, and of course the new classic itself. There is the Civivi Elementum. As you can see, these things lining up an awful lot in the similar size compartment, or department, not compartment. And of course, while we're pulling it, there is the Benchmade bug out with Flytanium scales. This one is the S30V. So, and of course, one last thing, as it must be shown, this is how it compares to my Wienar. As you can see, it is approximately the same as my Wienar in length, but in both thickness, thickness, and just overall girth, my Wienar is definitely larger than the Chris Reeve Sebenza 31 Mini, for what that's worth. All right, so let's get on to that. This is fantastically made. You're going to hear a lot of gushing in this, especially when it comes to attention to detail, and I'll get to that throughout the rest of it. But first of all, the design. This is a classic design, has been around in a while. I don't want to call it a coffin handle, but you've got that waisted where it goes in, and it's a modified, just symmetrical waisted design. But with the curve, the curl, it allows you a lot of leeway in your grip. Really, on the small one especially, really lends itself to a pinch grip. You have no inlays here or anything like you do on that, so your finger has a lot of space. And the inlay actually really gives it a bit of a backstop right here that you can almost pivot off of. So your finger can really pinch right there. There's a lot of space at that sharpening choil to give your finger some room, so you can have a lot of torsional control to avoid it twisting out of your hand. The divot inside here where the pivot, the divot at the pivot, definitely gives you a spot to center your thumb. The extra bit of space right here where it goes down instead of being out there actually gives you the right angle, so you have something to rest your thumb on, and then you center it right there so you have grip in different spaces. Having the inlay on top up here along with this gives you a nice thicker spot up here while maintaining some thinness on the lock side, so you can really, your fingers really go into there and grab it. And having this dip at the back means that you have a narrow spot here where it tucks into the crevice of your palm right there, so that it's narrower and then widens out. It's actually really quite brilliant. The shapes that don't seem to make a lot of sense make a lot more sense once you put them in hand. You even get a little bit if you choke back, where these fingers actually give you some more torsional control and drop the clip right into your knuckle. It's really, really good for the size. They maintain really good proportions, and for just this, you know, these are really cool lines, but once you realize that there's an actual reason along with the rhyme to the lines, then it really starts to stand out of just how fantastic it is. So there's the designed part of it when you go into it. The crowned, let's see if that'll leave, there we go. The crown spine right after the jimping all the way out. The high saber hollow grind. Let's see if I can if you can see. Do you see the changing shine on that secondary bevel? See how it maintains that shine as I roll it through multiple angles. That's indicative of something you normally wouldn't see. That is a convex secondary bevel on a hollow grind, which actually gives you an S grind, where you go in and then you get down to the edge, and then so it's in and then convexes out to the edge. That is honestly my favorite geometry ever. You get the thinness behind the edge, but the actual secondary bevel itself is the very robust convex bevel. But once it gets done doing its job, it falls away from the material, which means you can move through. It maintains a thin sliciness for harder materials like paper thin, or where you're going through. You get that same robustness behind the edge, but for softer materials, cheese, meat, anything that's got some viscosity to it, right? But it's still kind of soft and gooey. The hollow grind allows it to move away. It allows it to move through and reduce some of the sticking. Much like you see the Granton edges or the little scallops on a kitchen knife. This is essentially one giant Granton or scallop on the hollow grind. Well, it doesn't exactly work that way because it can maintain a single seal. You can get something that will maintain and stick to the whole way. It allows you, if you're moving at different angles, to maintain some nice gap. It works quite nicely. And the toughness behind the edge along with the thinness, oh, it is a beautiful little cutting machine. And I have been testing myself, but if I had any arm hair left, let's see, there might be a little patch there. Ooh, I better shallow that out. That was about to go in the skin. It just, I don't know if you can, the camera's picking that up. Let's see. Just peels it right off. So yeah, definitely has plenty of sharpness. And that's out the box. And for those who don't know, this is an S45. It doesn't say it on the blade, but it is an S45VN version. Well heat treated and all that. The design of this knife is so classic and so well thought out. It's really hard to find any fault. You may not like it. Anything you don't like is subjective, but it's really hard for anyone to spend much time using this knife, doing it, even if you don't like the design, to acknowledge that the attention to detail and the small details make a huge difference in this knife, and it's very well thought out. That gets me to the aesthetics. It's so classic right now, it's almost boring because it looks like a knife. The aesthetics of this knife are really, really hard to explain, except that, well, if anything, if imitation is a serious form of flattery, and I'm not saying they're imitating, but you understand the design language when you see something like this. Whoa! Not what I had expected, but okay. Well, so there we go. Now I'm in shorts. The world has seen that I wear shorts. Terrible. All right. So this is the Wee Wisp. It doesn't have the exact same. It has a curve to it along with a hollow ground drop point. Similar in size. You can see, there's a greater choy and all that stuff. But you can see that the blade shape, angle, all that stuff, very similar. Is that a copy? No, it's using a really good formula in a different way. I'm not saying it's copying, but I'll give you another one that is one of my other favorites. Flat grind. Very, very, very similar in the way it sits, the way you reach back and you can get in there. This is, by the way, the Southern Grind Spider Monkey. So you can choke back on this one, much the same way that you can choke back on this one. For a small knife to be able to generate significantly more power by doing so and getting it way out there, that's important. And it has instead of having a full blade on there's a lot of things that are different, but as you can see, there's definitely some similarities to the design language. And that's a good thing. It's a beautiful knife. That is some very, very good flattery. A nice dish back, a bigger, deep, even though it's a little bit, but then up to the finger. There's The little gap, the sharpening choil that works wonderfully is oversized. That's just enough to provide a good spot to get a pinch grip. The hollow grind, the subtle double angle to the drop point that gives it almost a clip point look, along with the round, crown spine on there that sort of gives you almost the idea that there's more there, but there's curves. There's a shadow that makes you believe there's curves. And a second angle makes you believe that it's lighter, and then it curves down. It really gives you some nice optical illusions that give you an even better, that make you feel there's more curves when there's not, and more lines when there's not. It's really, really quite amazing as far as that. And the mechanics of it, this is a washer pivot. This is not, I mean, don't get me wrong. This is definitely slow roll. This is something you can open much more deliberately, but it doesn't take much to make it go. This is dry, you guys. This is not oiled. This is out the box. That is some smooth washer action right there. For those who don't know, they usually use some really large pivot washers too. See if I can even. If you can see that, I don't have a pen light handy either too. But it approximately, where that back stops is where the washer is. There's some big washers on some of these sides that really provide a lot of surface area to help smooth that out, but also maintain stability. So it's not always something that comes out. If you throw a little wrist or you have some gravity, boom, every time it does it. And if you're not trying to do it on camera, or if you have something where you're just, if your fingers don't get in the way like mine do a lot, doesn't take really anything but a really good thumb. A little bit of pressure on the thumb more than normal. And now, that'll get to the SX. The rest of the mechanics are going to be in here because, wow. Let's take a quick look at, I don't know if you can see. The feel on these inlays is that they're pillowed, meaning that it feels like there's an indentation that they slide into that makes them pop over. If it wasn't for one particular place, I would feel like they almost were. These things are so tightly fit, they feel and often look like they're pillowed, except for, see if I can get right there. Right along this little back curve right here. There is just ever so slightly a little bit of gap, and ever so slightly a little bit of gap around this right there. That's amazing. It's visible, so I know there's a gap there, but it is less than 1/10 of a millimeter. That is barely enough gap to be visible in bright light and shadow. Very amazing tightness. That is some pretty crazy and solid production tolerances that are pretty stable all the way around. And the clip on here, you can see the line where the pocket clip goes around, and that gap around there is not completely even. But again, we're talking about something that's, the overall width is maybe 1/10 of a millimeter, and the gap in there is approximately 50. So we're talking something like, 5/100ths of a millimeter, or 50/100ths. 50/100ths of a millimeter. That is tiny. That is really good, really, really good tolerances. The beveling on every piece of titanium. There is not a lock interface here that isn't titanium, but let's be real. Carbidized titanium, or carburized, or whatever you want to call it, properly hardened titanium. Lots of lock face interface there, by the way. Nice lock-up interface. But hardened titanium, carbidized or carburized or whatever you want to call it, titanium, isn't much different in Rockwell hardness to something like the 420 series that you usually see in liner locks. Anything that is basically like the steel even is something like a compression lock, but it's not a standard liner lock like that. That right there, that's just basically like 420 steel. It's not super hard. In fact, it's not much harder than the titanium bit, but as far as wear resistance, I would actually believe in the titanium carbides and all the stuff that goes into there, and some of the stuff that forms on the surface to help or that goes in there when you carbonize it, really has a high wear resistance coefficient. Those carbides are pretty solid, especially compared to something like normal steel interface. So I'm not too worried about the wear compared to a steel interface, unless it was going to be like S45VN. Unless they were going to put the same material as the blade, so that the wear in is more even, or even more crazy. You put something that's got higher wear on here, so it wears out the blade, which is even worse. This isn't too bad. This is really good. I know a lot of people like the. I'm one of them. I generally like to have something, if it's going to be titanium, I like to have, some sort of interface where you got like steel that's going to be interfacing with the steel instead of carbonizing the titanium. But this is still pretty cool. And I'm going to... This isn't the tightest line. There's other makers that make really tight lines where it comes to this. But let's see if I can get this to focus. The interesting part about this one is it's a pretty solid 90-degree corner, and it's really sharp. And if you look real close, every piece of that is beveled. And I want to show, here's the wee. It's beveled, and then the beveling stops once it gets past the front. Once you start to roll over, and I'm using, because we is a very, very well made. This is an example to show how even really well made knives don't do some of these attention to details. Is this one's beveled too, right up until it starts to roll over. Right? Here's another wee. Not beveled in the cut. My wee nar. Not beveled in the cut there. Several others it's rounded, but the beveling stops right after the front. So, little detail on the Chris Reeves. It's beveled all along the cutout for the frame lock, but you roll it over to this side, and that beveling is still there. This lock face is beveled right up into the blade instead of just on the front. Little attention to detail that makes a huge bit, especially when all of these edges are knocked down too. The inside of these edges are slightly rounded. They're not beveled like this, but they are still slightly rounded. The chamfering on the lanyard discs, the set in for these screws, meaning there's little dishes that these oversized cap screws sit in that make them sit below flush. The slight changes in the, and I am going to gush on details. This is machining and craftsmanship and attention to detail in really high level. You can see just how much it is right here, where there's slight changes to the beveling to accompany the screws and make sure that any stop pin or anything like that has more titanium to hold it there, and you still have some flat right around. That is some ridiculously fine machining right there. Yes, you could probably argue that there could be a tighter gap on the lock bar, but that's I'll take the ease of cleaning that size of gap with the knowledge that they have literally put in that much effort into the machining tolerances and just attention to detail, like running the chamfering all the way over. It is amazing. And yeah, there's some cool stuff. Let's see if I can see them. There's a D10 Valve. You can see it inset into. Oh boy, no, you might not be able to see it. It is inset into the titanium, even though you can't see any of it. There is a valve. The mechanics on this are just about impeccable. Yeah, there's an argument to be made for possibly wanting bearings just for the smoothness of it, but to tell you the truth, a little bit of polishing. I haven't even taken this apart. I'm not sure if I'm going to, but you could probably put a tiny bit of polish to the washers with a little bit of Trizac or something, or some high polish sandpaper, and you could probably put a decent polish, even if you just did a good strop, and get a little more smoothness out of it. There's plenty of, I have washer knives like my Spider Monkeys that are washer based and are very, 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 very drop shitty. This one is obviously made to be smooth. I have to it is hydraulically smooth, but it takes more than gravity to make the knife blade move. And that's a personal preference. I do like it. It makes you know that you're deliberate in opening the knife. What you're going to do with it, closing it is a requirement. It doesn't take much effort. It just takes some deliberate effort, which isn't bad at all. And that's going to get to part of the reason why I am gushing on the attention to detail and the manufacturing tolerances and the materials. Black linen micarta, bead blasted or sand blasted, I forget what the name. It's a tiny little abrasive blasted titanium. S45VN hollow ground S geometry or essentially convex secondary bevel, hollow ground primary bevel with a well done lanyard. And I am normally a huge fan of really deep carry clips, but that sucker is pretty good for what it is. That could very well be replaced. I could definitely see possibly replacing this one with a deep carry clip, but it is, quite honestly, the deep carry doesn't do much when I still have a little tail of the thing hanging out. So there's that, and that brings me to the cost, because let's be real, this is nice, right? The mechanics are nearly flawless. The aesthetics, it's a classic. This screams pocket knife. Just about anyone looks at this and they'll say, oh, that's a knife. Like, this says knife. It's hollow ground. You pick it up, someone's going to know that's a pocket knife. It looks like a serious pocket knife, and it looks like something that, could be dangerous, could be useful, but it's a real knife. There is really a polarization around it, but it is hard to deny that this is a few classic lines that literally scream pocket knife. So there's that. I love the aesthetic and the design aesthetics of it. I personally like the simplicity of the design and the way it interacts. And once you have a design that is essentially this simple, they can really fine tune the details, and they have. One of the noteworthy points of owning a Chris Reeve, this is a 20-something, may even be close to 30. It's like 20 to 25-year-old design that has been being refined. This is a staple in the knife world, in the pocket knife and other stuff. This is just something that's theirs. It's a design that's been around. It has stood the test of time. It's obviously good design, and they have put the mechanics into it and into making it good, and it is. It's well done. Its intended purpose is obviously EDC in lots of different stuff, but it's sheer what you might call generic or basic design. I don't want to say basic in the sense of I want to say basic in the sense of simple, not basic in the sense of easy. It is basic in the sense of simple, but it is far from easy, and the attention to detail makes this a basic design that is really well done and really useful. So for an EDC knife with the hollow ground, the convex bevel, using it as a hunting knife, a skinner, a backup pocket knife, it's all there. The titanium frame lock, gonna be sturdy and solid. The washer construction, going to keep dirt and grit and stuff out quite well, to the point of where you could probably run this underwater if you had to get any gook out and not worry about it being in the pivot. The thickness of the blade stock is solid. The S45VN will hold a ridiculously good edge, is sharpened to a ridiculously good edge, and has toughness better than most any other steel. I mean, it's easily double the toughness of M390 in this category. So with a edge retention boost over S45VN while still maintaining a lot of sharpness. I still like S30V a lot, but a lot of the things that make S30V better, in my opinion, S45VN has, with a little bit of toughness boost to boot. So there's that. As a general everyday EDC in this intended purpose, this thing is, there is no EDC task that this one really can't. If you're willing to put this through heavy duty use, it'll do it. This is solid construction. This is a heavy use knife, but it probably won't get there, which brings me to the next point, which is the cost value ratio. Is it great? Well, yeah, it's great. It's totally great. It's also, generally speaking, between $450 and $600, depending upon what inlay you get in there, what steel, what size. This is basically really close to a custom knife. It's just on a production level. Mid-tech, I believe they call it, or something. This is really amazing. It is also not cheap. Now, it's not on the thousands of dollars level custom, right? This is, they pump these out. This is production line level material. And so they pump a few of these out. That being said, is the price to value ratio there? No, I'm not even going to pretend. It doesn't come close to the cost to value ratio of something like the Ritter Hogue Mini. This is $150 with 20 CV steel, ridiculously good stuff. It doesn't have the same production tolerances and put together as the Chris Reeve, but value for your money in a knife doesn't even come close. Not gonna lie, you can't do it. Now, as far as just a knife goes, the value's there. If I have a bunch of knives like that are actually have that level, they're willing to take loosen up on those standards just a little bit in order to get that. Actually, there's tons of them out there. What there isn't is a lot of them that don't compromise on quality and on build and on tolerances and that sort of stuff as this does. Now, I have never met Chris Reeve or any of the people from there. I'm sure they're nice people. They don't know. I did not ask for this knife. I bought this knife. This is going to be in my collection. But that being said, cost to value, no. That doesn't mean it's not worth it. And that might sound weird, like, no, it's not a good cost to value, but you're not paying for just the name. You're paying for ridiculously tight production tolerances. You're paying for 25 years of design refinement, right? More than 20 years of design refinement. You're paying for high quality materials. You're paying for knowing that they didn't let it go out the door before it was double, triple, or quadruple checked. You know that it's a design that's been there. The level of detail also lets you know that anything about this knife that's on it is probably deliberate. That level of attention to detail, build quality, the simple little things like the inlay being shaped around the clip. The sheer level of detail that goes into this to make this a comprehensive design that pulls together with every little element is really, really hard to overstate. This is well done. You're paying for quality, but you're hitting that part of diminishing returns where you can pay a whole bunch of money and you're getting a lot of returns. Then as you start to pay more money, the returns start to come in smaller and smaller areas. It starts to come in smaller and smaller increments as they're closer to percentage. But you start thinking about, to get twice as precise, it costs twice as much. So $150 knife to get one that's twice precise costs, say, $300 or something along those lines. It becomes a diminishing return line, and there's lots of other people out there. I'm not going to do the graph. It's a lot of math, and I'll get too nerdy into that anyway, and this will become a math video instead of a knife video. Whoa. That being said, however, I'm going to start pulling in there because Look, the expectations of this knife should be, if you're paying this much for it, it should be outstanding. It should. You're paying a bunch of money for a knife. You should be able to nitpick. And I tried. I really did. Like, there's a few things. There's some subjective stuff when it comes to the lock bar interface. But I understand why it was made. It keeps a simple design, and it's as good as any liner lock material. The single-sided thumb stud might give you some pause, but why do you need two? The clip isn't reversible, and there's left-handed versions available. So why have two? Does it help in a pinch grip a little bit? It'd be nice if there was a second one there to really tuck your pointer finger in. But it gives you something against that your thumb can be against while in this that you can too. And if your thumb's there, it's got no inlay to lift it at a weird angle. It's still nice and smooth. And with the thinness of the titanium, it's comfy. Which gets me, you shouldn't expect it to be a Sebenza Elementum. And it's not. It's not the same value ratio. It's not the same thing. But if you're buying a Chris Reeve Sebenza, you probably shouldn't be comparing the two. You probably should know, and I would like to think that you understand the intricacies of modern machining, the intricacies of something like diminished tolerances and diminishing returns, the amount of effort that has to go into maintaining those level of tolerances versus the cost in time and hours that it takes to get there. If you can get so good and get a system going that you're able to get really fine tolerances at an economical price, you've done well, and these guys seem to. If you're expecting it to be a budget knife, it's not. Your budget's gonna be huge for this knife. This is one of those knives you save up for. I had to save up for 2 months and save up my knife budget to get this knife, at least 2 months, plus a few other things I had to get rid of to make sure. This is not a cheap knife. It's just not. But it's really good, and the attention to detail is there. It's not necessarily going to last that much longer than a cheap knife as far as like being taken care of. It's what quality of use you get during that time. And that's what you should look at it. In the cost to value ratio, the near perfection in the tolerances and build quality is normally something you'd be looking for at more than twice the price. It's the kind of thing where you can get custom, where you get this level of detail and custom work too. So it really has a custom level of detail in a relative mid-tech or, basically a production model hand assembled. And that sort of thing. So there's a lot there. It's really hard to justify. I'm not going to make too many excuses for it. Something that's essentially a car payment in a knife or more. I mean, I honestly bought it was a long time ago and money's different now than it was then, but I've spent $500 on a car before, for crying out loud. I spent $500 on a motorcycle that I then rebuilt. KZ 750 twin. So yeah, this is not cheap. And there's, other than the value in a well-made tool and just being able to appreciate the attention to detail and the commitment to quality, low errors, low tolerances, high build quality, high fit and finish. This is there. Like I said, it's, other than let's see, I don't even know if I can show it. Like, other than that, there's a slight gap right there. I mean, that's the level of nitpick I have to have. There's a visible gap where the shadow of the linen micarta inlay into the slot that was cut for it, that is approximately 1/10 of a millimeter, where other places it's much less, if not 1/10 of that or half that or less. So it's visible because it's a line that is now not shared around the outside. That's the level of nitpick I have to get to find errors. A curved lanyard knot. I mean, seriously, that's the kind of crap I have to find to try and nitpick to try and find something wrong. What would I change about it? Do I have any requests? I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit in the there, but then you wouldn't have the Idaho mate. A deep carry clip, though I don't think they'll be going for that because this is really close anyway. It's hard to say I would change a classic. You end up changing the knife. Part of what makes this a Sebenza is all this, and they have refined this design down to the point of if you change it, it's not the knife. So there's hard to get there, which puts it right there. Yes, this is absolutely 5 stars. Goldilocks, fantastic. Oh my goodness, excellent. Everything you want. It is high up there. It is also not cheap. You pay for the quality, but you get what you pay for on this one. You definitely get high build quality and a commitment to it. This has been a really long video, and spoilers if you didn't guess in the beginning, it's gushing over this. This is a fantastic knife, but if you're looking for a value ratio, this probably isn't it. If you're looking for a commitment to quality and the type of attention to detail, build quality, and just overall fit and finish, this is up there. It's one of those things where the fact that it went out the door, I would bet that the people who made it, me pointing out that gap, right? Oh, look, there's a spot in the micarta where it's not quite me pointing that out probably hasn't been fixed, because they'd be like, oh, we'd replace that if we'd have noticed. It's just a sheer amount. The quality control effort is incredible. And it's really well worth it when it gets down to it. If you're looking for one of those, you want to be like, oh my God, this is what other companies and other build qualities strive for. This is it. The tolerances are tiny. You have to be looking for it to see things like uneven borders and all that sort of stuff. And the unevenness is something that's only barely measurable. It's only measurable because other parts would be so consistent that when there's an inconsistency, it pops out. And that's all there is. That's all the nitpick there is. The rest of this is just absolute excellence of execution in a beautiful classic design. It is really hard to find anything to complain about or wrong with this knife. And with that saying, I'm going to leave it there. This is the Chris Reeves. This is the inlaid version. I wanted the inlaid. I do recommend, if you want to spend less money, get the plain titanium version. You can have it flamed, you can have it anodized, all that sort of stuff to customize a little bit. You will save money. You'll get some narrowness back because the inlays do add a little bit of thickness. Even if they do, you'll still have the pivots. If you don't care about some of the nice lines that the inlays give you, then yeah, you'll have the same knife with essentially no inlays or anything like that for approximately about 50 to 100. I think it's like 50, it might be 75 or so. But you save a substantial amount of money for the same knife. I definitely recommend, if you can, the S45 versions. If they come through, I know right now they have a lot of S35s, but I believe the S45s are coming. And with this one being out there, if there's a Magna Cut version, I may be really looking for one of those. But that being said, do I want a big one? No. It's I don't have a lot of use for if there was a mid-sized one in the 3 1/4 type blade, as opposed to like a 3-inch or a 3.5. If there was a 3 1/4 in the mid-size, that would definitely be my style. Something more along the size of this, right? In the Sebenza, if they had a 3 bears version instead of just, it's like small and large, it's like, yeah, but I want a medium. They got small and large and I want a medium. But other than that, if there's one thing I can request, if there's one design request I would have, is give me a medium. There's a 3.46-inch blade and a 2.98-inch blade. Give me a 3.2 or a 3.25-inch blade. Give me something right in the middle. Like you're going on this side of it, you're going on this side of it, and I want this knife. But that's true of so. Right, you make things. There's so many of them that are just large and small, no mediums, and then there's ones that have no large and small, and so many of them just run the middle where they're the medium size, the 3 1/8 or 3 1/4 blade, where you get a larger handle. You get, to me, that's the Goldilocks zone. But this also fits in the pocket, and once again, I know I said I would do it, but I'm gushing. It is recommendable if you are saving up and you're like, man, do I really want it? Look, if you're saving up for one of these, if you already have a knife, if you're trying to save up and being like, I need to have a Chris Reeves or no other knife will do for an EDC, that's just not true. There's lots of knives that will perform EDC functions. But if you have something like, here's what I would tell you. If you have something like a leak, or if you have a Rat 1 and you have your tough knife, you got something like a Rat 1 that's out there, and that's your tough big knife, and you need something that's gonna do different duties, and you only need those, and you're saving up, and you're like, geez, do I want a Chris Reeve? It's worth it. If you want, I've heard a lot of things talk about gentleman knives being more about the design, but for me, having one that's this high of a build quality, there's some flex to the pricing of it, one that's worth that much money and paid for it. You paid for the extra. You paid a lot of money for a little bit extra. That's an executive knife. That's a CEO. That's a gentleman's knife. That's someone who's willing to pay a lot more to get that extra benefit, because the extra benefit provides something. And this knife does. It is a lot more money. The extra benefit the extra cash you pay for the knife does provide you something. So there is value in the extra money. But, hiccups. There's value in the extra money, but you get what you pay for. Titanium frame lock, S45VN, hollow ground, convex edge, black micarta inlay, and absolutely stunning. And I mean, I can find the tiniest things, but really everything that is wrong. This is completely cosmetic. Is a normal fluctuation and difference in the materials, the natural materials, more than anything else. And titanium frame, it's amazing. The build quality on this is really, really, really top of the world. That's not like you can find things there. I've heard Shiragorovs have maybe even slightly higher build quality, but I'm just going to say at this level, the build quality is hard to top. I would definitely take it in, but this right now is my current new top standard for build quality and knives that I've experienced. It just is really that much above anything else I have. Even things like the Bestech Unzi, that the tolerances around these carbon fiber inlays are something I can view without having to really get it under a light or a microscope, and that's just not true of something like the Chris Reeves. So yeah, again, gushing. It's a good knife. Is it easy to purchase? No, not if you're on a budget. Is it worth the money? Will you ever sit there and be like, wow? Depends on how hard you use it. If you sit there and smash it with a sledgehammer, you might be upset. But if you use it like a knife, no, it'll last you the rest of your life. High value, high cost. I'm going to say it's worth it, but you have to want it. Like so many other things in this life, you have to want it and think that extra bit of quality, that extra bit of attention to detail, that extra bit of just making everything fit right is worth 2 to 3 times the price of another knife. That calculation is one you have to make personally. For a lot of people, it won't be it. For a lot of people, they'll be like, I can get, and this is the truth, even though this knife isn't available anymore, I can get for half the price, I can get 90% of the knife. And there's a lot of truth to that. But you're only getting 90%. If you're 100%, or if you're like, no, I want that 100%, this is what you got to buy. This is what's there. This is what you need to find, is something that puts this level of attention to detail in there. And if you're one of those people, for the most part, I'm not, but I do know how to recognize it, and I definitely appreciate it when it's there. So with that being said, you guys, I am going to wrap this up at nearly 50 minutes in a absolutely gushing video on the Chris Reeves Sebenza 31 small, and it is an absolutely fantastic knife. That's a beast of a knife, ridiculously sharp out of the box with a ground convex edge that is absolutely stunning, and an attention to detail that I have just literally never seen in any other production or pocket knife I have ever experienced. I have not experienced all of them, but obviously, but I've had a few in my hands and a few others that I've had the luck to play with. And this one just really tops them all in that category. It's hard to overstate just how well made this is. And with that being said, I'm going to go through 5 stars, but a lot of money, but definitely a great knife. And once again, this has been your dose of Drew. I am said Drew. This has been a knife review on Friday Night Knives. So go ahead, open up this video, watch it twice, comment as much as you like, be mindful of side effects, and remember to come back and subscribe. Once again, this has been your dose of Drew, and I am said Drew, and you all have a great night.